Open any media trade publication today, and you will see the same narrative. The war over AI content licensing is largely settled. That narrative relies on looking at only two types of contracts. The first is training data. These are one-off, archive-shaped deals where AI labs pay a fixed sum to ingest a publisher's historical back catalog. The second is display licensing. This is the chat-shaped interface where an AI summarizes an article and provides a link back to the source. Cumulative publisher-side licensing volume for this category recently hit $2 billion. But those two categories miss the actual mechanism of the post-wire web. There is a third column, raw feed ingestion for downstream per-audience rewrite. In this uncontracted third category, the AI model functions as an intermediate processor. It ingests a single wire story from a place like Kyiv or Gaza to produce dozens of differentiated, localized rewrites for separate downstream publication endpoints. Executing these rewrites at scale carries a specific, measurable cost. When you isolate the unit economics, they mirror the established royalty payouts of the music streaming industry. We are going to map exactly how AI news ingestion aligns with mechanical music licensing and examine the four-party standoff actively preventing a similar contract from being written today. Leaving this third category unlicensed routes billions of dollars exclusively to the display layer, systematically starving the original reporting bureaus of the capital required to operate. A digital music stream and an automated large language model rewrite are both functionally units of derivative work production executed at massive scale. Spotify pays roughly $0.004 per stream, Apple Music $0.008, scaling to $0.013 on Tidal. Directly below, rewriting a source story on local models costs $0.003. Cloud APIs reach 0.02. Both occupy the exact same numerical neighborhood. To be precise, inference cost is the marginal computing power, mostly electricity and server time, required to generate one specific rewrite. It is entirely separate from the billions spent training the model initially. In the music industry, this derivative production is governed by a highly regulated payout infrastructure. The Mechanical Licensing Collective has processed over $3 billion in streaming payouts since 2021. AI rewrites currently generate zero royalty payouts. The raw data feeding those AI models doesn't generate itself. It requires an international reporting infrastructure of journalists, fixers, satellite uplinks, and physical bureaus operating in hostile environments. The physical footprint of this capital requirement is visible in legacy liar agencies like Reuters or the Associated Press. Maintaining this network requires immense funding. Settling a raw feed royalty in that overlapping half-cent band would give wire agencies a defensible economic floor, while giving AI labs a predictable variable cost tied to their actual output. The music market already provides a blueprint for these unit economics, making the lack of an AI licensing contract a matter of industry will rather than a mathematical impossibility. The technical infrastructure to track and meter AI bots is already deployed. Platforms like Tollbit currently sit behind the firewalls of thousands of publisher sites, monitoring exactly what AI crawlers extract. Tollbit has two licenses, summarization for citations and full display for text. Neither permits downstream rewrite. That path is blocked. Standardizing this requires 6 specifications. 1. Pricing unit. 2. Attribution. 3. Derivative scope. 4. Right to ingest. 5. Audit framework. 6. Modification scope. Having the metering infrastructure is useless if the industry refuses to codify these 6 contract parameters into a legal standard. The standard remains unwritten because the 4 major players each benefit from keeping raw feeds unregulated. AI labs oppose licensing. Their financial planning relies on fixed compute budgets, so a per-rewrite royalty introduces unbounded variable costs. For executives managing billion-dollar AI firms, maintaining the fixed-cost status quo is highly preferable to signing a contract that scales expenses alongside product usage. Brand publishers also prefer the gridlock. They are currently hoarding the entirety of the $2 billion in display licensing payouts. Executives at legacy publishing conglomerates have little incentive to advocate for a standard, forcing them to share revenue with upstream wire cooperatives. The remaining failures are structural. Wire cooperatives lack leverage because they are often owned by the publishers they'd negotiate against. And search engines prefer the status quo because it maintains derivation opacity, allowing them to avoid per-source accounting for their AI-generated answers. Private market contracting will never solve the raw feed gap because the entities with the power to write the contract financially benefit from its absence. A new technology outrunning existing licensing infrastructure is not a novel market phenomenon. In the early 20th century, the music industry faced an explosion of automated, machine-read derivative works in the form of the player piano. In 1908, the Supreme Court heard White-Smith versus Apollo. Songwriters argued they deserved compensation for piano rolls. They lost. The justices ruled that because humans couldn't read the perforations on the paper, they were not legal copies of the sheet music. The machine-readable format bypassed the legal definition of reproduction, leaving the original creators uncompensated for the automated distribution of their work. Congress had to intervene to correct the market failure. They passed the 1909 Copyright Act, creating the first compulsory mechanical license at 2 cents per unit. That 1909 intervention sparked a 117-year evolution of copyright law, updating compulsory licensing frameworks for new media formats through the 2018 Music Modernization Act. The 2026 AI raw feed gap sits at the exact same historical phase as that piano fight. With industry self-organization failing, the only mechanism capable of forcing a resolution is a statutory compulsory licensing regime, a copyright royalty board equivalent for news. Legislative timelines are agonizingly slow, but the undeniable mathematical reality of the 0.003 cent cost collision guarantees this framework will eventually be codified. The AI raw feed contract will be written. The only unresolved question is whether the original brain bureaus have the capital to financially survive the next 24 months of legal friction before the law finally catches up to the machine.